Hello everyone, welcome to the Love Review channel. Let's continue with the Hot Movies 2025 review. Today I will bring to you the movie The Angels Become Fairies. The movie begins with a shocking scene where an old man has been training for 100 years and is facing the angels. In a moment of destiny, he is alone in the middle of a gloomy cloud. While all the lands below are at a standstill in his life, he can fly successfully. It is estimated that the angels only have 12 islands as usual, but the old man has gathered up to 99 stars, but still has not seen the end. The sky is full of a giant dragon with blue eyes appearing in the middle of the cloud. His strength is beyond what the old man can withstand. He thinks that the merit has been fulfilled, but in the end, hundreds of islands still drag him down to the middle of the cloud. At the same time, in the capital, a family is holding a funeral for the angel, who is said to have died on the battlefield 3 months ago, in a fierce battle with the demons. The 3 angels of the angel have taken him out of the state of injury and left him to fight. Now the body of the angel has become a resting place for the soul of the old man after the failed robbery. When he woke up in his new body, the angel was extremely confused, not knowing what was happening. At that moment, the butler stepped in and saw the angel standing next to him. He quickly reported that the 3 angels of the angel Tranli-Bach were coming to the capital. Hearing this, Fiduong's father took them to cancel the wedding, because he thought that all 3 of his sons had died. But the butler said the other way around. The 3 angels came not to cancel the wedding but to make a wish. He immediately went out to welcome them with gratitude. Chen Tu-Tui, the representative of the 3 families, spoke up because the 3 of his sons had fallen down at the North Pole to fight the demons. So if the 3 families get divorced now, this will make their people believe that they are ungrateful. Fiduong's father asked again, "Don't you blame our useless son?" Because of the 4 sons, Fiduong was the only one who had no money and could not train the foundation of the family. Tran Tu-Tui, the representative of the 3 families, of course did not agree. Even though they were of the same origin, the 3 of them were geniuses, while Fiduong was 1 heaven and 1 earth apart. At this time, Fiduong appeared to listen to the conversation and asked back if he had considered why he still wanted to. Tran Tu-Tui gave the condition that if within a month he could stop the spirit of stepping into the path of Buddhism and overcome their 3 people, they would keep their vow of marriage. On the contrary, if they failed, they would publicly propose, because now she is a master of Buddhism. Fiduong did not hesitate to criticize the absurdity of the 3 families when the 3 girls came to negotiate a marriage without an adult to go with. In addition, he said he would not cancel the marriage, but he gave the condition that he did not think it was any different from forcing an overbearing person. Seeing that he strongly responded, the father's heart was softened, because the son who had fallen down dared to stand up again. Tran Tu-Tui was angry and said he wanted to cancel the marriage right there. Of course, he also wanted to withdraw, but Fiduong immediately insisted that if he successfully practiced and overcame all 3 in 1 month, they had to keep their promise and marry him. Tran Tu-Tui agreed that a month later, Thien Huynh City would hold a martial arts competition. The winner would become the 3-time champion of Bakwang. "If you have a liver, Fiduong, please come." His father was worried, but Fiduong only talked about coming to this country. No one dared to be sure what would happen. Everything had to be based on oneself. At the same time, the owner of the house returned to visit the house after a period of training at Van Tu Kok. He was very self-blaming that he could not go to Bak Kwong with his 3 disciples to fight with the Ma people. His father comforted him that everything was already set. In the meantime, Fiduong asked why Chiu Hang did not ask him. The owner immediately replied that Fiduong did not deserve it, because although he was a coward, he did not want to practice, which repeatedly caused the 3 champions to die in the battlefield. Meanwhile, he lived a carefree life as if nothing had happened. The father heard this and compared that if Fiduong had the temperaments like Chiu Hang, he would not have to worry like now. Injured, Fiduong reacted fiercely, saying that if his father respected Chiu Hang like that, he would always accept him as his son. Faced with a tense situation, Chiu Kan ordered the general guard to invite a Grand Master of Martial Arts to supervise Fiduong's training. He also told Chiu Hang that Fiduong had just returned from the battlefield and had been in a coma for 3 months, so he had to change. Chiu Hang expressed his gratitude, but in his heart he thought that his son was still a closer person. At this time he proposed to introduce a friend that he met when he trained a master near the opening of the new Haodin match that could enter Chiu Fu. That friend was the Grand Master of Martial Arts, who Chiu Kan immediately invited to stay for a few days. At the same time, the 3 junior officers of Tranli-Bach were in the forest outside Tan, discovering the sound coming from Tandia, and knowing that Tan fruit had bloomed, They immediately set out to look for lotus seeds to enhance Tuvi. At Chiufu, the Grand Master secretly used a magic spell to set up the whole Suntrang. When Chiu Hang visited the Grand Master, he confirmed that he had a strong foundation, with the territory of Duso being suppressed right below Suntrang. Thanks to the territory of the Haodin match here, it has the strength to surpass the usual level. Although Chiu Kan was only a former Grand Master of martial arts, but when he was in the big match, he could become a worthy opponent in the field of martial arts. Hearing this, Chiu Hang Chanan affirmed that he had prepared a plan. The 3 sons of Chiu Kan all died in the remaining match. The useless one was Phi Duong. As long as Phi Duong died, he would gain the confidence to become the owner. Step by step he approached and captured Lin Mak. Trang immediately pledged that, if he was just a weak little boy like Phi Duong, he could give up in silence, with just one hand. As long as Phi Duong left Suntrang, unexpectedly all those secrets were heard by Phi Duong from the outside. He realized the unyielding heart of those two, and was determined to play to the end. When preparing for the match, Teo Nim was invited to come out, to help Phi Duong become a worthy opponent. However, Phi Duong was not interested in training. In front of that attitude, Teo Nim made the condition that if he could continue the 3 skills, he would let him leave. Phi Duong immediately agreed. At this time, the older man was in a coma in Phi Duong's body, but he was still not fully integrated, so he could not exert all his strength. However, he was still easy to choose among the 3 skills of Teo Nim, without facing any difficulties. When he turned around, people left Teo Nim unexpectedly, non-sword all the way, but was counter-attacked by him, making Tan Kim hit straight to the back of the kickboard. In front of the strength and sword of Phi Duong, Teo Nim not only recognized his talent, but also took the initiative to accept him as a disciple. At the same time, he apologized, because he had previously only recognized 3 disciples but left him. She promised to transfer all the command, to help him become the strongest person in the martial arts supply line. Sun Yi stood by happily, because a great master of martial arts like Teo Nim accepted him as a disciple is extremely rare. However, with the expectation of everyone, Phi Duong reluctantly refused. In his heart, he was a fake old man who could not accept a girl as a master. After saying that, he suddenly turned around and did not turn his head back. Sun Yi immediately ran after him. At that moment, she discovered that there was a miraculous light emanating from the temple. She was happy to report that the lotus flower in the temple had begun to bloom there, and the temple had been nurtured for 100 years. It could create a new spiritual path to strengthen Tuvi. Although Phi Duong did not believe and did not care about Sun Yi still insisted on taking him to see. At Dongdao Temple, the master and disciples of the family gathered to wait for the lotus flower to bloom. All 3 young men were calm. Bai Chi and Tu Tui were also present. When Phi Duong appeared, they expressed their disdain, not to be seen. Bai Chi personally heard many bad rumors about him, but still doubted and asked himself if he really was as bad as the rumors. Although he was not blind, Phi Duong still agreed to stay for this Sun Yi. At that moment, the elder, Chi Tian Ngui Chong Koi, appeared in the temple and announced that the Bodhi tree had begun to respond with a sign that it would bloom. He reminded that all of these flowers had been nurtured for 81 years, and the Bodhi tree would choose its owner. In order for the lotus flower to be recognized, each person had to take a step forward, still using his or her inner strength to harmonize with the Bodhi tree. But he also warned that the lotus flower was an object of the Bodhisattva, anyone over the age of 29. When the Bodhisattva has passed away, no matter how high the rank is, it is of no use. Do not try it. After that, many people repeatedly took the test but all failed. Bai Chi also strongly advanced, in the hope of getting a chance to raise the rank to surpass Bai Chi, but she was also not chosen by the lotus flower. Seeing this, the Bodhisattva and promised that if she or the Bodhisattva were chosen, she would definitely share the lotus flower with Bai Chi. When the Bodhisattva lotus flower revealed the sign of blooming, the Bodhisattva confidently stepped forward in front of all eyes. She had a strong belief that she would be chosen by the lotus flower. But when she just stepped closer, the lotus flower just lightly bloomed, and then the crowd began to stir. The Bodhisattva saw this and immediately hoped to change the situation. But the result was no better than the lotus flower just opening a little. It was not her merit. The Bodhisattva Chitian, the guardian of the realm, saw that no one was chosen by the lotus flower and immediately prepared to close the door to end the ceremony. At that time, Xuanyi was eager to ask the Bodhisattva to take a step forward, but he still expressed his anger and did not intend to turn people away. At this time, the Bodhisattva said a few words that he knew well, so he just pulled back and touched the weak point that the Bodhisattva noticed. He wanted to prove that he was not a weak person, like the sarcastic words. Of course, the more sarcastic that he was humiliating himself, the more convenient it was to mention that the wedding would take place in the next month. At the same time, an atmosphere of tension surrounded Chao Kietu, the prince of the royal family, appeared. With a dignified appearance, his temperament was like Ngok Han, immediately attracting all eyes. Not seeing clearly this person's temperament, the Bodhisattva suspected that Chao Kiet was the great master of martial arts. When he heard that he was a prince, he did not wonder why he was so young and had such a strong temperament. Although he was the fourth child, but compared to Fi Duong, he was like heaven and earth. The crowd immediately performed the ceremony to pay respects to the prince. Only Fi Duong did not care. Chao Kiet was angry because of this and forced Fi Duong to kneel down to atone for his iniquity. But in return, Fi Duong was only cold and affirmed that he was the son of a master of the royal family, even though the royal family could not force him to kneel down. He also reiterated that the great master of the royal family was only close to the royal family, which anyone who knows must know clearly. Those harsh words made the servants like Yen Yen and Tu Tui even more angry. Why did he know how to take advantage of every place he had and add more advantages that Feng Tai brought to the servants? If he had a little more wisdom, it would be that all three sisters were difficult to escape from him. Chao Kiet at this time did not want to confront an useless person, stating that he came to the temple only to worship the Bodhi tree and prepare for the upcoming martial arts conference. A month later, he intended to win the title of the Demon King and be the enemy, to go to the battlefield to catch the demon. Those words made the crowd spread out in a hurry to restore the prince's posture, bringing the belief that Chao Kiet stepped in front of Lin Hua and still used all his power. But the result was no different for Yen Yen and Tu Tui. The flower bouquet would only open and quickly close. Fi Duong was laughing, while the elder Chi Tian was preparing to declare the end of the ceremony and close the ceremony. But at that time, Xuanyi was not willing to give up the loudest voice to remind her family that she had not yet stepped on the stage. Fi Duong continued to face the contempt of the prince and three concubines. Both Yen Yen and Tu Tui were waiting for the moment he humiliated himself in front of the Bodhi flower. Even the elder Chi Tian also thought that he should not try because he would be disappointed. The crowd around did not regret the harsh words that made the atmosphere more and more tense. Although only Bai Chi secretly felt that his unnecessary personality was lovable, although he did not dare to say it because he was. Fi Duong calmly stepped up, both worried and determined to see as an opportunity to test his strength again. But when he did not have time to use his power, although he only stood in a quiet place, a blue light suddenly spread. The Bodhi tree made the flower Bodhi bloom. In the midst of the shock, he himself also reluctantly did not believe in what had just happened. The prince did not hide the anger why a person who had not yet used his power made the flower bloom. The people did not immediately admit that their power had promoted the process. Fi Duong was just a giver. However, the elder Chi Tian immediately confirmed that the flower chose the master, congratulated Fi Duong, and affirmed that his future was definitely bright. Those words made many people responded calmly. The elder did not hesitate to criticize the hostility and indifference between the young and talented people. He was told that the black heart of the prince was silent and then immediately passed the law down. Fi Duongten collected lotus seeds from the flower and gave the elder a seed to express his gratitude for taking care of the Bodhi tree for many years. He also intended to give Xuanyi a seed, but she wanted to give it to the three young masters. Finally, because there was only one seed, Xuanyi chose to give it to Bai Chi, the person she loved the most. Fi Duong was grateful and gave Xuanyi another seed. He gently said that even if it was given to a woman, but it was not her turn to receive it. On the way back to Fi Duong, he found someone following him. He immediately told Xuanyi that the one who was following no one else was Trang Le. He suddenly went out to assassinate Tung Mukuk and brought the power to Phi Duong and believed that he could kill him. But he did not have time to resist. Phi Duong was protected by the three young masters to save him from death. Before the battle with Trang Le took place, Bai Chi was worried that Phi Duong brought too many precious seeds, that Tu Vi was not tall enough. It would be very dangerous. Hearing this, the three young masters secretly decided to follow him, to escort him home safely. When Trang Le appeared and attacked the three people who had not yet entered the fight, it caused his soul to scatter. However, Trang Le was a powerful general who quickly defeated all three injured soldiers on the spot. He also intended to capture the first American general, Tien Huynh, but did not have time to do so. When Phi Duong returned, Tung Mu made a Trang Le beaten like sand into a tree and then continued to use the strongest against him to the air, completely suppressing Tu Vi, made him unable to resist. In anger, Phi Duong did not raise his hand and made him disintegrate. Then he adjusted the clothes for Yen Yen to make the image of him in her eyes completely changed from the usual Yen Yen to the longing to be close to him. He even shared a lotus seed for both Bak Chi and Tu Tui so that they could absorb her power more and more. Before leaving, Phi Duong gave Yen Yen a lotus seed to heal her wound, because with him everyone should be treated fairly. Not long after Bak Chi and Tu Tui woke up, they suddenly realized that their wound had healed. Bhakti was even broken to the bottom of Tam Pham and was able to become Tu Tui's Tu Vi, completely stabilized. Both were extremely surprised because they did not know that Tu Tui was Tu Tui. Yen Yen asked Yen Yen. Tu Tui 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 asked Yen Yen. Asked Yen Yen. Tu Tui 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 asked Yen Yen. Phi Duong reacted angrily, arguing that his father had made a big mistake because he was also very disadvantaged. The father-in-law laughed and said that if he was really so excellent, the three young ladies of Tran Bach Li's house would not have come to the door to cancel the wedding. Phi Duong immediately refuted that, because they did not clearly understand the Englishman. If they had understood, they would have fought for him for the sake of seeing. When the son heard the rumor, the father-in-law just nodded, saying that he did not expect anything far away. As long as there was a girl who was brave enough to look straight into his son's eyes and not run away, he would be very happy. But then he laughed cheerfully in front of the confident love of this rebellious son. At the capital of Tan Tien Huynh, when the prince's father-in-law was angry, he wanted to burn the soldiers alive just to vent his anger. Li Huang, Banzung Kim, the emperor of Hoanghok, was both nervous and determined to try to guess the reason why the king was angry. But the prince's father-in-law did not have a weak heart. He was only angry at a man named Chiu Phi Duong. He thought that Chiu Phi Duong was useless, so he could survive and come back from the battlefield to capture the king, which made him uncomfortable. In his eyes there were only two possibilities. Either Chiu Phi Duong colluded with the ghost tribe, or he had some hidden agenda. Whatever the reason, the existence of Chiu Phi Duong was also a thorn in his eye. Li Huangban heard this and was very angry. He was wondering why Chiu Ka could not save his son, which made him so angry. Then he quickly analyzed that if he really had colluded with the ghost tribe, the punishment would not stop at a person whose whole family had to suffer. He tried to swallow a lot, but did not expect the prince to be angry again, because he thought that he was being suspected. Immediately he forced Li Huanban to listen to the plan to destroy the whole Chiujia. When the army of Bin Din Bakwong was built by him, he would ask for permission from the emperor to let Li Huanban hold all 16 cities to the south. In front of the site of the power of heaven, Li Huangban immediately bowed his head in gratitude. His heart was full of anger and desire. At the same time, in Chiufu, Chiu Hang was uneasy and restless. Zhang Le went to assassinate, but the result was that Phi Duong returned alive, and he lost all his face. The next morning, Li Huanban led the army to capture Chiu Phi Duong for colluding with the ghost tribe. However, Phi Duong's father, Lao Da Chiu Kan, absolutely did not believe his son's betrayal. Although Tu Vi Phi Duong was still young, he knew that his son's heart was always straight and righteous. He did not dare to take his life to ensure his son was clean. Seeing his father worried, Phi Duong still calmly said he believed in Tan Chu Dong, but did not dare to change his black dress too much. He would return safely. His calm words made Chiu Hang more suspicious, while his father stood still and did not contact Xuan Yi to invite Tio Dainyan to come. The news of Phi Duong was transferred to the hands of the 3 concubines. Chen Tutui kept the peace. For the Chiu Jia's loyal family, all 3 together tried to save him, but Phi Duong did not let injustice prevail. In an unmerciful state, he was suddenly lying on the bed as if he were awake. He soon realized that the one behind this conspiracy was none other than Prince Chao Kiet. Outside, his father and Tiu Niam came to the Lao house to beg for people. But Tran Haklin, the subordinate of Prince Qian Kuit, stopped them and arranged a truce to stop anyone. At the same time, the 3 concubines also came, in order to break the truce to save Phi Duong. But they did not have time to go out. So Phi Duong was inside a cage. His body was covered with mud. Phi Duong used the power of the prince to smash everything, breaking the Lao house. The prince suddenly escaped. Only Li Huangbun's whole body was covered with mud. His nose was covered with smoke. He could not believe why he could not save Tiu Niem. Phi Duong just smiled and said clearly that a lord who only knows how to swear does not know what shame is. Li Huangbun immediately knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Phi Duong said that he was lucky that Li Huangbun had not died, otherwise he would not be sad. But he warned that the prince would definitely continue to cause trouble for Tien Huyen. Li Huangbun promised that from now on he would see the prince as a common enemy. With the whole Tien Huyen, Phai Zhuang and the Lord Li Huangbun stepped out of the mansion, his body left behind the eyes of everyone. Only Yin Yin remained calm, because she had long realized that he was deliberately deliberately hiding the truth. When he returned home, his father did not need to worry about what happened in the Lord's mansion, but he avoided to answer that he drank tea and went home, making his father more and more uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Tam Tutui did not hide his discomfort in front of his father. She begged him later to be more patient, not to let his father be sad because of worry. He accepted her words in a humiliating way that made her more and more angry. Tutui bluntly said that her and her 2 friends came to help him, but that did not mean anything to him. His actions in her eyes only made her feel disgusted. He was so confused that he did not understand what he had done that made her so angry. But Su Tui refused to explain to him with an unanswered lie. Leaving the mansion, she was still not angry and did not want to make a fuss. However, although she knew that she did not want to make a fuss, Lin made a loud voice to invite everyone to have a meal together. She refused because she wanted to focus on preparing for the upcoming martial arts competition. Hearing this, Tutui said goodbye and see you at the competition. Only 7 days left for Phi Duong's father's martial arts competition to start training with Tiu Nim and Triu Hang. He was really surprised that he had trained for 100 years, but now had to start again from the most basic steps, training from energy. But this is what made him realize that it was time to regain the will that he had lost for a long time. When he started practicing, he thought he could easily lift a stone in front of his face. Unexpectedly, despite his full strength, he still couldn't lift it. His father only knew how to breathe, while Tio Niem persistently asked him to try to lift it as much as possible. He was sweating so much that he could not feel clearly, that he was silently living in his heart. It turned out that this was the feeling when he found the direction he had forgotten, not stopping at normal training. Tio Niem even asked Phi Duong to come to the big bar to soak himself in order to cure the longest pains caused by training. This time she especially took him to a lake with a precious mineral that is extremely rare and often used by people with great potential on the training path. When he knew the value of that mineral, in his heart he doubted or did not understand why a weak person like him deserved to use this treasure. But Tio Niem did not stop. In her eyes, if she was his future master, giving up a little bit of effort to help him improve was the right thing to do. She told him to try his best to be successful in the future. Without letting him hesitate, she immediately asked him to go to the lake. But because he was so tired, he did not even have the strength to take off his clothes. Seeing this, she immediately stepped in to help him without hesitation. Although he resisted because he was afraid of the male-female rule of self-restraint, but Tio Niem did not see this as a big deal. She quickly took off his clothes and put him in the cold water. His body was immediately shaking, and he was no different than a turtle. The feeling of being forced to slip in the middle of the earth made him hate himself later. Tiunim asked him to let go of his whole body, to let the cold water lead the medicine deep into the tendons. Under the pool of strong mineral water, he forced himself to follow nature, inhale deeply, feel the power of nature, and then let go of his body. Seeing him do it right after Tiunim's instructions in his trembling heart, a new one began after losing all his muscles that could move so fast, no different than an old monster trained for 100 years in a new body. She thought that if she had a ball in her hand at this time, she would definitely help him recreate Dandin so that he could really step on the Vordau road. When the human body became lighter and more flexible, Phaidong suddenly pulled her hand into the pool. Tiunim was enraged and immediately closed his eyes. That wound was then taken care of. Bishuanyi. At the same time, in another place, in the Haotian Palace, Prince Hot Hai came to meet the Queen of Chouqing. He told her that he was badly injured by Tang Tianhuyan and affirmed that there was no need for the throne. However, the queen was angry, not because of Tang Tianhuyan, but because of his misconduct. Many accused him of using the name of the royal family for his own benefit, wanting to establish his own power in Tang Tianhuyan. While his 3 nephews were both heroes, he did nothing to make the royal family lose face. Even if Tang Tianhuyan was in love with the country, it was just a small city that hadn't had a worthy talent for decades, so how could he let himself be bullied to this extent? The ruler immediately issued an order to tell him to immediately go to Gathong Vukchutu Nam to ask for the throne back. At the same time, he also officially assigned him the responsibility of selecting the ghost party for Tang Tianhuyan. Being supported by his father, he was confident that this time he would definitely make everyone bow their heads before him. Meanwhile, at another corner of the city, Bakchi came to meet Chulu and brought 500 coins to redeem his old house. But he refused, asking for a double of 1,000 coins to pay for it. Seeing that she did not have enough money, he cleverly suggested that she keep a lotus seed as a rare treasure with a value of at least the equivalent of the missing amount of money. If she agreed, he would immediately give her the house paper. After a while, Bakhtri was about to give the treasure out when suddenly Phaidong appeared and stopped him at the right time. When Phaidong stopped Bakhtri from using the lotus seed to exchange for the old house paper, Chulu immediately expressed his dissatisfaction that the purchase was not related to outsiders. But Phaidong firmly affirmed that the lotus seed was given by him, so he could not see himself as an outsider. He did not want her to exchange such a precious treasure for a shabby house. With Bakhtri, that house was deserted, but it was a place to keep the memorial of the great-grandfather, mother and father, and a warm childhood with spiritual value that could not be replaced. Realizing that, Phaidong decided to intervene deeper. He stated that Bakhtri was his future fiancée, so he had the right to decide. He gently persuaded her that if he had lost her loved one, keeping them in his heart was the best way to remember. However, she still wanted to keep the house. Before that situation, Phaidong offered Chulu Bacham lotus seeds, but Chulu reluctantly agreed. But Phaidong did not stop. He pressed down 250 more lotus seeds, making him bleed. But he had to accept. As a result, Bakhtri successfully bought the house back. When he left, she thought maybe she misunderstood that Phaidong had taken the small number of lotus seeds. She was curious about his true identity. After that, Phaidong came to Tongtian to train. Without Dandien, the road to Vordau became extremely difficult. However, he had heard that from level 33 to the top of the tower, he could find the raw materials to make the altar. At the same time, Tutui and Wenghui also came to Tongtian. Wenghui did not know where. He received the task of saving all 3 people in the forest. The day before, making Tutui emotional and confused, began to express coldly to Phaidong. In front of her, Wenghui did not stop bragging that Phaidong was useless, incompetent, and only knew how to run on the battlefield. He also suggested that she should find a reason to get married to avoid being bullied by a girl like that. Tutui kept her honor straight, but still kept a soft attitude, not wanting Wenghui to continue to get involved. When the 3 of them met at the tower, Wenghui added that he used to be the leader of the 3 KK people in Bakkung who had sacrificed for the cause. He pleaded guilty to them for being stubborn, so that the whole army was killed. Phaidong heard this. Wenghui was the one who gave the order to Tutui, but Tutui immediately complained that the battlefield was always changing, making the commander have to worry about the big picture. Not wanting to argue anymore, Phaidong asked for permission to leave. Tutui again expressed her condolences, reminding him that only the love of Tu on the top 3 floors was enough to kill people. Wenghui also complained but Phi Duong still decided to step in on the side of his words. Thu Tui now expressed her intention that if he wanted to continue his training, he could join her and Vung Hui's team. At Nguyen Tu would be divided. It was said that Thu Tui had reached level 19, while Vung Hui had reached level 21. Phi Zung knew that if he started from the beginning, it would be very difficult to reach level 33, where there was a fire. So he accepted to join the silent team, and calculated that the path deep into Taptong Tien Noi could still change. In the face of the chaos of Tu Tui, Phi Zung finally agreed to let him join the team, but forced him to start with them from level 18. He wanted to get to level 21, so when he heard this decision, Vung Hui immediately confessed that he never knew enough. However, Tu Tui still firmly insisted on asking permission from the two elders guarding the gate of the tower. When she heard her suggestion to bring new people to level 18, the elders gave her a jade card that said that if there was an emergency, 3 people only needed to break the card to be able to retreat safely. Then all 3 were brought into the tower. At the 18th floor, the guards were armed with a powerful martial art. Only when they defeated this guy did they have a chance to receive the precious raw material of Tap Tong Tien Noi to train Dan. But Phi Duong was not impressed with this battle. He left Tu Tui and Vung Hui to fight, and left the battlefield to observe and explore around. That observation helped him discover a strange pattern deep in the rocks. The design of this place is extremely strange. It is clear that it must be overcome in order to be able to start the French battle to move to the next level. He was impressed with the intelligence and superiority of France in the battle, but being a former champion, he understood its principle of operation. He did not deny that he still had the power to open the boundary, directly transfer himself to level 19 without having to defeat Vorhon or use the jade card to retreat. His actions made Tu Tui, but she realized that she had brought Phi Zung to the tower. If he really died in there, others would think she deliberately harmed to cancel the marriage, so she immediately accompanied Vung Hui to help bring him to level 19. Meanwhile, Phi Duong, when he stepped on level 19, did not see a single fire. It seems that someone has come before and taken it away. This kind of fire, 7 years old, can only be extinguished once. With his body gone now, he doesn't know if he still has a chance to wait 7 years later or not. On the other side at level 25, Tu Tui and Vung Hui have to face a monster with a terrible power. Vung Hui, who had just seen the situation was unfavorable, ran away, grabbed the jade card to retreat, regardless of Tu Tui's single-handedly battle. And the one who quickly took the fire was the girl who had passed all 33 levels of Tong Tien Pagoda. That achievement made the 2 elders guarding the tower have to bow their heads to her and make a declaration, a rare thing to see in the past. Outside, Vung Hui promised to return to beg the 2 elders to save Tu Tui, but they only had the task of guarding and not allowed to interfere in the situation inside the tower. So they just nodded. Instead, he silently decided to take full responsibility for Tu Tui's death. If Vung Hui had not gone to Tu Tui's back, he would certainly have won. At that moment, Tu Tui was about to fight. At that moment, Tu Tui was about to fight. At that moment, Tu Tui was about to fight. At that moment, Tu Tui was about to fight. At that moment, Tu Tui was about to fight. A straight punch appeared on the loving child, breaking it into pieces. Immediately, Tu Tui fell to the ground. Because of the force, Phi Duong came to catch her and smiled gently. With 2V, she dared to climb to the 25th floor alone, and Vung Hui left his teammates and committed a terrible act. Knowing that she was not a bad person, he did not accept it, then gently pushed her out of the tower. Outside, Vung Hui has brought Tran Tu Tui's mother to the scene, building up an epic story. Han Trang Truong was furious that Phi Duong forced Tu Tui to join, while he himself tried to stop but was powerless. The words provoked Tu Tui's mother to be angry. She was so angry that she just wanted to beat Phi Duong to death. In the middle of the incident, Phi Duong's son was still holding Tu Tui's hand. That image made Vung Hui can't believe his eyes. In the meantime, he was as calm as ever, just a little bit angry that Tu Tui didn't do anything, then turned around and left. Thanks to the power of Tu Tui's mother's words, he woke up soon. In the fog, she saw familiar shadows lurking near the gate. She couldn't help asking herself if the person who saved her was really Phi Duong. At the same time, at the house of Truong's son, Truong Hang was playing chess with his father. The old man breathed out a sigh of relief, saying that he had spent a lot of effort to invite Master Tu Tui to teach martial arts to Phi Duong. So he didn't understand why Phi Duong blamed Master Tu Tui for making him so angry that he didn't want to come back. Truong Hang at this time expressed his understanding of the incident, that he didn't do it on purpose. Right in the middle of the conversation in the house of Tuong's son was revolving around Phi Duong, blaming Master Tu Tui. He was the one who came back to the table. Not to mention that he immediately pushed him down, angry that he had caused something that made Master Tu Tui not only did not come anymore, but also did not want to send a letter of explanation. Phi Duong answered straightly that it was not a big deal. According to him, Master Tu Tui would not come again. His words were like pouring more oil into the fire. The father was so angry that he repeatedly slapped him several times, but he still pretended not to know what was wrong. That indifference made him more and more angry, not to mention that he really couldn't do anything about it. He even announced in the upcoming martial arts conference it would be best if Phi Duong did not participate in the trick again and lose his face and come out again. Not stopping there, he also decided to quickly choose a girl for him to marry and have children. Phi Duong did not immediately refute, affirming that he had 3 wives, all of whom were excellent and more beautiful than him. According to him, those 3 girls were all excellent, but after the martial arts conference this time, maybe all of them will agree to cancel the marriage. Phi Duong still insisted that maybe all 3 of them were in love with him, but it was not a joke. But he only said that he did not need all 3, he just needed a person who would stay, look straight at his face and accept to be their daughter-in-law. At that time, the steward stepped in and reported that Tu Li was coming, bringing a gift that he wanted to give to himself. The father immediately suspected that this was a letter to cancel the marriage, but he bluntly accused Su Fan that he had really given birth to a father-in-law, who made him lose all his face. Li appeared with a dignified look, greeting Phi Duong, showing his respect. Phi Duong also did not immediately refute her move, in a way that made her laugh. When asked why the steward suddenly took out a box of a precious ingredient in the 9 components of Lin An's exorcism training, this object is likely to help reveal the extremely useful elixir in training. Although it is only a part of the necessary ingredients, she still brought it, expressing hope that it could help Phi Duong. The father at this time also saw the value of the item, saying that this was a legacy of Lei's. This young girl had given up too big a price, but Lai of course only replied gently that she came just to give something, not to bring anything else. Whether or not that object is precious is not important, because in her heart, sooner or later, the 2 of them will be one. After saying that, she reluctantly left the entire room, with her eyes closed in shock. Phi Duong smiled happily, while the father was as confused as if he were in a dream. Wan Yi stood next to him, not forgetting that he was the one who fought with the steward. Phi Duong only laughed and pretended to be modest, saying that he did not dare to accept the victory. But the father was still suspicious. In his eyes, he could not imagine Li Yun suddenly changing his attitude, while before that the 3 of them were still in a straight line against Phi Duong. Phi Duong considered it a matter of course. He said, full of himself, that everything was thanks to his own way of attracting people. Hearing that, he breathed heavily and often criticized his son for being rude. At this point, he even dared to talk about the attraction of personality, which really made him embarrassed. But Phi Duong still pretended not to believe, saying that the truth was right in front of him. If the father did not believe, he had no other way. Finally, the father accepted that today Phi Duong had made him look with other eyes. However, the story of the steward was not over yet. He emphasized that at all costs, Phi Duong had to invite her back to Chiujia. No matter how good you are, if you can't solve this problem, don't expect peace of mind. Heard that Phi Duong wanted to announce his participation in the martial arts competition. Chiu Hank immediately reminded that, before the whole family had agreed, to let him practice with him, before inviting the ambassador back. However, their parents were not satisfied. Miss Kim said that tomorrow was the deadline to announce the name. If the water reaches the new leg, it will be useful. He also did not expect Phi Duong to go to the battlefield anymore. The final purpose of the competition was to elect the general, which the steward had offered too much to the Emperor Hao Tian. What he hoped for at this time was that Phi Duong would peacefully leave the marriage and give birth to a child. But Phi Duong still insisted that he understood his father's feelings, but could not take a step back. If he did not participate, even Tian Huin would laugh at him, saying that he was a coward, hiding from responsibility. He affirmed that he absolutely did not speak, and promised not to die outside the battlefield, making the winner have to vote for the winner again. In front of that determination, the father and son could only breathe. He realized that his son finally had a chance to advance. Phi Duong then thought that if he came to this world, he would live up to the title of Phi Duong. The 3 generals begged him to save him, but he could not refuse. However, the internal training still needed time to stop again. Chiu Hank, who was already smiling, asked why he did not train from now on. The father immediately ordered the two brothers to train together to increase Phi Duong's self-defense ability when going to battle. In front of that arrangement, Phi Duong agreed. Chu Hang looked at him with tears in his eyes, thinking that tomorrow he would teach this useless name a lesson to remember. The next morning, the father sat down to watch the two opponents train. Chu Hang expressed his arrogant attitude, showing his sword in his hand as a masterpiece from Tian's son. When he pulled it out, it was cold as snow, so he brought a sharp sword to scare people. Phi Duong only silently thought that if it were not for his love for his father's son, he would not need to raise his hand. But no matter what, teaching him a lesson to wake up again is what he should do. He calmly chose a sharp sword, which every time he pulled it out sounded like it was about to break. Chu Hang expressed his remorse, saying that if he couldn't stand it anymore, he would forgive him. The father looked at that scene and just shook his head in amazement. The two people rushed into a fierce sword fight. Chu Hang attacked continuously, but was suddenly overwhelmed by Phi Duong. Seeing this, the father guessed that Hang Ni was forgiving his brother. So Ni stood aside and praised Phi Duong, making him shake his head that he was too blind and he could only write poems. In his eyes, he was invincible. Chu Hang became more and more confused. Phi Duong's sword was not only strong, but also extremely sharp. He could not understand that the Grand Master had only taught him a few times, why he had become so good at it. The father still thought that his son was being forgiven, so he told Chu Hang not to raise his hand too much. If not, 4K would not be able to progress. Chu Hang thought he was really blind, and he used all his strength, but still could not win. He was so angry that he intended to use 2V to attack, but Phi Duong immediately countered with a powerful move. The old-fashioned sword made a sound like the air was being blown away. The father had to intervene immediately to warn that the action was too much, but Chu Hang felt that he had clearly used up all his power, so the opponent could not force him to that extent. He was probably just pretending. Chu Hang apologized because he raised his hand too much. Phi Duong laughed and asked Engu if he still wanted to continue training. He was silent and asked if he still wanted to train with him. Chu Hang was in pain and quickly withdrew. The father then seriously asked if Phi Duong had really decided to give up. He nodded and said that he knew that the child was still weak because he was often looked down upon. The father also doubted the child, but that was never what the father wanted. Phi Duong smiled and told the father not to say too many swear words. The father laughed and said that he also needed to show off to his son. For him, honor or glory did not matter. What he wanted the most was his son to be safe and sound. In the room where Chu Hang sat alone, his hand was still shaking. The panic did not stop. After the match with Phi Duong, he could not drink a cup of tea. In his heart, he was filled with anger and remorse. When he opened the sword to check if it was still in the sword that had been broken, he could only cry out for the fate of that precious sword. 3 days before the martial arts, the atmosphere in the martial school had become hot. Among them were 3 prominent women, Yan Yan, Chen Tutui, and Bach Chi. Yan Yan's eyes did not stop looking for the familiar figure in the middle of the sea. Clearly, he was waiting for someone. Tutui saw Yan Yan thinking that Phi Duong would definitely not dare to appear, and Yan Yan was confident that he would come. Bak Chi stood next to him and felt that Yan Yan seemed to especially care about Phi Duong. At that time, the 4th prince, Chao Kiet, and the overlord, Ket Hong of Tuyen Nam, suddenly appeared, making everyone immediately bow to him. From above, he loudly announced that the martial arts, this time, would be completed and that everyone did not need to worry too much. The lord stood quietly and watched with a full heart. Chao Kiet's eyes did not see Phi Duong, but at that time Phi Duong appeared in a very confused state. He stood in the middle of the martial arts and asked if everyone had finished, and then he greeted the 4th prince. His sudden appearance made Yan Yan nervous. She knew that he would not believe her at all. Meanwhile, Tutui did not look at him, because in her eyes he was nothing but a fool. The 4th prince at this time became more and more difficult to understand, and asked Kat Hong why a man who did not have Dan Dien did not have 2V and did not have a fake martial arts, but only used a skill that had defeated him. Cat Hong replied naturally that maybe Phi Duong had met fate, or had in his hand, once again, a chance to return after the war in the North Pole. Anyway, in front of absolute strength, all tricks are meaningless. The fourth prince heard so, immediately nodded, and said that with the martial arts of Cat Hong, it was not easy to suppress a man like Phi Duong. At that time, Li Huangban stood up to officially declare the martial arts had started the form of the competition. This year was changed according to the information and personal achievements. 4 people in the front will be exempted from the round into the group of 8 strongest people. The round will choose 4 more people, and then the fight will be arranged again. For the last time, the rules of strict competition are absolutely not separated. The first person to advance to the title was Li Yinyan. She reached level 14 at Tongtian 2V as the third master of the old section. Next is Chiao Hang, reached level 17 as the master of the first section. After that is Bachtri, reached level 19 as the master of the second section. All of them have unparalleled. Next is Tran Tutui as the master of the next section. She reached level 25 at Tongtian 2V as the fourth master of the old section. A far-reaching number of all people. Right after that is Wen Hui, reached level 25, but his level was higher than the fourth master of the old section, which made not a few people have to fear. Finally, Chiao Fizeng reached level 20 as the master of the next section. All the masters immediately turned their eyes to the British side, full of expectation to witness a self-proclaimed useless man. However, when the old section checked the level of Tongtian 2V, his face immediately changed. When the old section stood quietly in front of the bier of Chiao Fizeng without saying a word, the crowd thought that his achievement must be low, to the point that the old section did not feel sad to announce, but the old section immediately insisted and was invited to see. When he saw the number on the bier of Tongtian 2V was 33. He could not believe in his eyes. The whole square was like a stone. All eyes were on Chiao Fizeng. His mouth was full of feelings difficult to express. Only Xuan Ni was happy. The rest did not stop spreading. Some began to look at him with eyes adoring. Others still doubted. Cat Hong admitted that even herself was difficult to get over that level. Showing Phi Duong was not normal. Prince Chao Kiet was upset, did not believe in his initial ability to explain, and Cat Hong but accepted that the bier would never be wrong. Chiao Hang stood there with a pale face. In his mind were some questions. Fizeng was really strong to the point, but he adored her eyes following him. She knew that the moment everyone realized the true talent of the last Fizeng was coming, but it was at that time she asked herself, the biggest opponent from now on is not only you, but also the 2 most outstanding women in Tianhuan, Tutui and Bachi. Bachi began to doubt his previous thinking. She remembered the times she doubted that Fizeng was not really weak like the outside, but was influenced by a lot of things later on. But now, with level 33 at Tongtian, clearly if not reached the power of the weapon, she could not achieve that result. Tutui also fell into the swamp, asking the one who saved her that day, was it really him? Only Wang Hui did not accept. He thought Fizeng was only lucky when the tower was in chaos to climb to level 3. According to him, even Dai Tongsu could not get out of that level. He was as stubborn as Fizeng. However, when it came to testing 2V, the result made everyone more confused. Everyone thought Fizeng only reached level 33, standing last in 2V's list. Immediately, the rumors spread. Wang Hui lied to Tutui, disappointed, thinking that Fizeng turned out to be just a fake. She felt more and more confused about this person, but Tutui had to test a level 33 whether she could easily beat Dai Tongsu or not. She believed that Fizeng's power could not be through the outside or just the number, although 2V was low, but with the lowest level of information. Fizeng was definitely at the top of the list. The announcement of the end of the competition would officially start after 3 days. Three Toshmasas when the sun rose, but Tran Tutui did not accept that result. She publicly opposed Fidung, but still kept her calm, as if she did not care about anyone. He made Tutui angry, but was by his confidence. Before he could raise his hand, Chiu Hang suddenly said that he was too arrogant and reminded him that even though he was famous, he should not be arrogant. Fizung turned his face coldly, but his eyes were full of tears. He did not hesitate. That Triu Hang's face was a meaningful place. His father adopted Triuji's food for 10 years, but now he turned his back to his family. He stressed that if he still played the game, he would not hesitate to reveal the inside, as if he had broken his golden sword in front of his father's harsh words. Chiu Hang only kneeled and apologized, but in the eyes of those who saw, his actions were misunderstood as the arrogance of Fizung, who took the identity of an orphan to bully the adopted. Even the prince did not hesitate to speak. Fizung did not let him calm and reminded that his family did not interfere. If the prince felt uncomfortable, it meant that he was putting himself in a trap that was not related to him. The prince was angry because Trio Fizung often provoked him. His arrogant and unnecessary made the crowd more excited. They did not talk about the arrogance of Trio Fizung, who not only did not reveal his identity, but also did not confront the prince. Chokiet could not keep calm and ordered Gat Hong to catch Fizung no matter what. That order made Fizung not only a bully, but also a real power. But she also understood that when she went through the tomb, people started to follow her path. When Gat Hong was about to take her sword, she revealed that she had a precious dragon, but the name was just a bad name that killed her family. So Gat Hong was not able to her sword, but she confronted Gat Hong. But when she was about to take her sword, she ordered everyone to follow her path. But Gat Hong was not able to follow her path. When about take her sword, Gat Hong was not able follow her path. When she was about, Gat Hong was not able to sword. Gat Hong was not able to follow her. When was about sword, Gat Hong was not able to follow path. When she about to take her sword, Gat Hong was able to follow. Gat Hong was not able to follow her. When she was about to sword, Gat Hong was follow. She was about to take her sword. Gat Hong was not able to follow her. When about take Hong was not able to follow her. Gat not follow her. When she was about to, Gat Hong was not able to follow. Gat Hong was not able. When she was about to sword, Gat Hong was not able to follow her. When she was about to sword, Gat Hong was not able to. When she was about to sword, Gat Hong was able to follow. When Tu Hong was follow. When she was about to sword, Hong was not able to follow her. When she, Gat Hong, was not able to follow her. When she was about to sword, Gat Hong was not able to follow her. When she was about to sword, Gat Hong, she was about to sword. Gat Hong was not able to follow her. When she was about to follow. When she was about sword, Gat was able to her. When she was to sword, Gat Hong able her when she about to cut Hong was able to follow her when she was about to cut Hong was not able follow her when she was about to sword cat was not able to follow her when she was about to cut Hong was when she was about to sword cat Hong was not able to her when was about to sword cat Hong was not able to when Hong was not able to when she about to sword cat Hong was when she about sword cat Hong was not able to her when she was about to sword was. His father heard the news and stood up without saying a word. He even bowed his head to greet him, his face shining as if he had just received the good news. When he arrived at Li Fufiduang, he saw that his relative was waiting with a warm and full face. Li, of course, did not hide his joy. His eyes were sparkling. His smile was a little bit shy, but still enthusiastic. His father-in-law bowed his head to invite Fiduang to wish him to have excellent achievements in the upcoming Grand Prix, and also to catch up with his dream of becoming a monk. Not letting him react in time, he immediately moved on to the main story. This time, he invited him to come to the ceremony to discuss the marriage between him and Yan Nian. Mr. Thang Tang said that there was a marriage agreement between the two families that had been decided in advance. Now it's just a matter of watching the auspicious day to get engaged. Hearing that Fi Duang did not hesitate to say to Yan Nian. In his heart, he still felt that marriage was a long-awaited story. But when it really came to this moment, he suddenly felt a strong heartbeat with an unclear tension. He turned to Yan Nian's father-in-law to ask why he did not discuss this with his father first. But the other party only laughed and said that Fi Duang had already had 3 marriage vows. He also only had a little hope that his daughter could make it official. As for the father-in-law, it was certainly not to the extent of blaming. Hearing this, Yan Nian was a bit confused and immediately tried to ease the atmosphere. She laughed and said that today's meeting was just a private meal. It didn't mean anything else. She invited Fi Duang to come just to have a meal, hoping that his father-in-law would pay attention to his words. At that moment, Bach Chi suddenly appeared to find Yan Nian but did not report it first. As soon as she stepped into the house, she saw the image of Fi Duang having a meal with Li's family without any surprise. In front of Bach Chi's eyes, Fi Duang calmly lied that he was just passing by to have a meal. But in her heart, Bach Chi was always wondering, with the current reputation of Fi Duang's house in Tianhuyan, why Lai could simply invite him to have a meal. Moreover, the atmosphere between them was so natural and intimate that it seemed as if they had known each other for a long time. Yan Nian's mother at that time gently kicked her husband's feet like a sign, reminding Mr. Mao to move back so that the children have their own space. So the 3 of them sat down to eat together. However, all day long, Yan Nian did not touch the chopsticks. Her eyes were only staring at Fi Duang, as if they were looking at another fruit. This made Bach Chi unable to ignore the question of what they were hiding from Yan Nian. Yan Nian saw that the situation was difficult to handle and tried to move on to something else. Yan Nian suggested that in front of her was a martial arts competition. If she wanted to practice, she should take advantage of the time and invite Bach Chi to go to a place that Yan Nian used to say was very suitable for practice. Bach Chi, hearing this, also nodded, agreeing to say that initially he intended to invite Yan Nian first and then invite Tu Tui to go with him. Just hearing the name Tu Tui in front of Fi Duang, he could not hide his discomfort. He immediately refused to say that between him and Tu Tui was not suitable, so if she went, he would ask for her help. Yan Nian saw this and immediately said that she would not invite Tu Tui anymore. Just the 3 of them would go together. Bach Chi also followed the plan of the 3 of them. Fi Duang at this time just nodded and nodded in agreement. Not long after, in a deep forest, Tu Tui was practicing a sudden fall. She rushed to the cliff, signaling that there was an intruder. Tu Tui quickly realized that there was a stranger going into the electric field, but there was no one else. It was Fi Duang, who was still holding 2 Yan Nian, and Bach Chi, who were heading straight into the electric field. Just seeing that scene, Tu Tui did not hesitate. The appearance of the 3 of them at the same time made her difficult to understand, did not stop thinking. The eyes of the 3 of them made Fi Duang seem to understand the thoughts in the other person's mind. He expressed his disdain and said that everything is just as she thought, there is no need to guess anymore. Bach Chi at the time hurried to explain that the 3 of them had just fallen outside, so it was a complete coincidence to fall in here together. Yan Nian also quickly agreed to hope that Tu Tui would not misunderstand. But Tu Tui was not easy to get over. She was angry that the two of them were good friends, but silently avoided her, even followed the Yan Nian like Phi Duongs to a desolate place without people. Hearing the two words Yan Nian, Phi Duong was angry. He asked the other way, could it be that she had given him a new nickname? But Tu Tui only got angrier. She said she did not want to hear English, because just hearing it made her sad. Phi Duong's wild attitude made her more and more crazy. She just wanted to beat him up. She said that if she met him at a martial arts competition, it would definitely make him confused, and even no longer have a chance to get married. Phi Duong also did not give up. He turned his back and replied that he did not like her either. Even before the competition, he still wanted to cancel the marriage, to get rid of the constant argument with people like her. He made it clear that neither of them should continue to fall in love. If Tu Tui had been so desperate, he would have let her pray without asking for any other conditions. This even his father agreed. That frank statement certainly did not hide his anger towards Tu Tui. In return, Tu Tui was so angry, but so schiers ergeren, that her heart was on fire. In her heart, she did not stop cursing the man's name in front of her and said that he was a despicable man. She clearly saw her from head to toe and dared to say anything else. Straight to the face of others, she strongly reiterated that she had hoped that after the martial arts competition, he would still be alive to sign the marriage. Not only for her, but also for Baqi and Yan Nian. But Phi Duong did not give up. He said directly that the cancellation of the marriage was only related to Tu Tui and did not intend to drag the other two into it. His arrogant attitude angered Tu Tui. She turned to ask Baqi if he was going to cancel the marriage or not as a way to force her to choose. Baqi was confused and did not know how to answer. Tu Tui was more and more impatient to say that now Baqi had been re-inherited, and Tuvi was also a master in heaven, and even on the continent of heaven. The young men who followed her did not lack anything. Why do they have to compete with a useless guy like Phi Duong? Hearing this, Baqi stood up and said that the marriage of the three should be decided by each person. She did not affirm that she would give it to Phi Duong just to get the right to choose her destiny. She did not want to be set up by anyone, even the closest person. Tu Tui did not say anything more. She turned to Yan Nian and reiterated that the two agreed to cancel the marriage after the martial arts competition. Whether Yan Nian would still keep his word or not, Phi Duong immediately turned his head and asked if he wanted to confirm what he had just heard. Yan Nian frowned and said that he did not know how to answer. Seeing this, Phi Duong stepped on the ground and pulled the two beauties standing next to him to one side, pretending to be full of arrogance, as if deliberately provoking the anger in Tu Tui's heart. Baqi stood on one side and looked at himself and pondered. Clearly, Yan Nian's attitude towards Phi Duong was not as simple as she imagined. Yan Nian was also fighting fiercely, between her will and her feelings, between her promise and the truth. She did not know if she should say it all or not. She said that her father had told Phi Duong that after the end of the battle, she would marry him. That statement made both Baqi and Tu Tui like flowers and stones, two people who could not believe in their ears. But Yan Nian did not stop there. She repeated it again to make sure that if everything was still alive after the battle, she would definitely marry Phi Duong. Yan Nian turned to look at Phi Duong and asked him if he agreed to marry her or not. Phi Duong replied with the half-confirmed answer. That led to a kiss between the two, as if it were obvious. Phi Duong hurriedly glanced at Tu Tui and Baqi, as if looking for a clever escape. But when his eyes just touched the stone door behind them, a huge creature suddenly appeared, as a big giant rat. Dangerous, all four rushed to run away. Phi Duong held a pair of scissors in each hand, and the whole group left the area. When they found a safe place, Tuanang hurriedly borrowed the house and quickly ran away, to avoid having to face Yan Nian again. Baqi at that time could not hide his question, and asked why Yan Nian had such an attitude to Phi Duong. That question is also what Baqi has been holding in his heart for so long, because Yan Nian has been behaving abnormally to him for a long time. Tu Tui also did not miss the opportunity to force Yan Nian to tell the truth. In the end, Yan Nian admitted that she simply liked Phi Duong and wanted to be cheated by him. But Tu Tui did not believe her again, so she worried that Yan Nian might be hiding his own suffering, or even being threatened by Phi Duong. In the face of the doubt of the two, Yan Nian said that no matter how much he said, they would not believe her. With her, Phi Duong is not useless, but a good person. If Baqi wants to cancel the marriage, Tu Tui can do whatever she wants. Everything is not related to her. She even thanked if the marriage was cancelled, because it would avoid a mix between three people for one man. she accepted to leave alone. Yan Nian was reluctant to have to look at the person in her heart, as if the other two were fine. She said that she left behind the doubt and some unanswered questions in Tu Tui and Bakchi's heart. In Phi Duong's house, Yan Nian and Tu Tui accidentally met Tiu Niem. Tiu Niem did not hesitate to immediately confirm that Phi Duong was keeping 2 precious medicines of lotus seeds and lotus seeds, so they had collected 7 main medicines. Not only did she find the 8th one, but this time she needed Phi Duong's help. She asked Yan Nian to go to a special place with her. Phi Duong was excited to agree, and strongly said that, wherever she went, he would go with her. But before leaving, Tiu Niem seriously asked Xuan Yi to avoid asking Phi Duong a personal question. When there were only 2 people left, she directly advised him about the situation. The question made Phi Duong, a shy person, answer that it must still be there. However, Tiu Niem wanted a clear answer. In the end, Phi Duong said that his body was completely clean. So Tiu Niem took him to a secret area where the lotus flowers were blooming. She explained that she only needed to get the lotus seeds from the lotus flowers and then find the last medicine. Then she could become an exorcist. However, the condition for the lotus seeds to have blood must be of a male and female. Phi Duong did not hesitate to confirm that he was a new boy, but immediately rejected Tiu Niem's advice about her age. However, he also revealed that the blood of the male and female was not enough. In his heart, he knew that the real condition for love was for both to truly love each other. But he and Tiu Niem could not do that. Moreover, if it failed, the consequences could be very serious. Therefore, he advised Tiu Niem to find another person. However, Tiu Niem affirmed that love is poisonous, people cannot stand it. Meanwhile, people who can stand it are often no longer accurate. Finding the right person is extremely difficult, but if you slowly let the flowers wither, all your efforts will be wasted. So she had to try. Phi Duong was going to leave, but suddenly she pulled her hair back and forced him to cooperate. There was no other choice. He reluctantly played with her. As if the warning of love was poisonous, it was difficult to penetrate. As soon as he tried, Phi Duong was stabbed. Seeing this, Tiu Niem suspected that he had deceived himself, that he was actually no longer pure. Phi Duong immediately refuted that. Being a grown-up man who still kept close to Ngoc Vuan was a very shameful thing. He never dared to bring it up. Tiu Niem still did not understand the reason why he failed, then suddenly realized that love had a slightly different movement. That scene made both of them silent, especially Phi Duong, who had firmly believed that the ritual would not succeed. Phi Duong stood motionless, even confused when he saw the love-hate relationship was gradually coming to an end. In the beginning, he let go of a meaning that made the heart beat. Hard to love Tui Tung. The condition was that the two had to truly love each other. So did he really have feelings for Tiu Niem? Meanwhile, Tiu Niem was angry when he saw how long the effort was finally paid off. But contrary to that joy, Phi Duong was confused again. He couldn't accept this result. Tiu Niem couldn't understand why he reacted like that. But Phi Duong knew better than anyone that the love-hate relationship only appears when 2 people truly love each other. And when the emotion of love is affected, the love-hate relationship will be infected with the poison that makes them suffer for the rest of their lives. He didn't have time to say anything, and a small pain came up. But Phi Duong again shook his hand. His face darkened. Mian Yang said that he always decided to help, without asking if he needed it. He said he didn't need Nang's care, and didn't want to see Nang again. He asked Nang not to come to Trier again. Tiu Niem didn't die, but his eyes were full of pain. Nang had done a lot for him, but in the end, he only accepted the coldness and denied the passion. In Nang's heart, the night fell in Phi Duong's dark room, and Nang was lying on the bed, sweating like a bath, shaking all over, because of the poison of love. The pain was no different from the pain of the day before. But Nang didn't dare to let Nang know, because he didn't want Tiu Niem to go through the same pain. In Nang's heart, there was only an apology and a promise that he would always remember. Nang's heart. On the last day of Volam, Long Trong held the first round of the competition. The leaders of Tien Huyen, Lo Chuha Vulo, and Viet Chung Tu Vien Don Lao were all present. There was also a special appearance of Prince Chow Kiet and Kat Hong in the first round, Chung Hak Ling Chung Long and Li In Yen won. In the last round, there was a tie between Chiu Hang and Kat Hong. This made Tu Tui doubt why Nam had to take part in the competition. Weng Hui stood nearby, laughing and answering that this was Prince's plan. That's why Tu Tui was so nervous. Nang decided to keep the distance and didn't want to talk to Weng Hui anymore. At that time, Chiu Hang was about to fight with Kat Hong, but Kat Hong didn't need to fight. That's how the round ended. with 4 winners and 4 losers. All were hoping to avoid Kat Hong in the next round. Li Yannian hoped to fight with Trieu Fiseung to win the round. The first round was a fight between Cheung Hak-ling and Kat Hong. Hak-ling immediately attacked Trieu Fiseung to make the fight more intense. However, Trieu Fiseung didn't want to fight with Hak-ling. Trieu Fiseung was so nervous that she didn't want to fight with Trieu Fiseung. Trieu Fiseung was so nervous that she didn't want to fight with Trieu Fiseung. As of this month, Cheung Hak-ling officially made the top 4. At the bottom, Weng Hui's voice was so loud that the audience was stunned. Fiseung deliberately gave the opportunity to be calm, but she didn't care about the vulgar words. She even expressed her support. She didn't hesitate to express her feelings. And the 4th Prince Chao Kiet, when he watched the game, he was deeply moved. He believed that with his current strength, Fiseung could completely dominate the final match. And when that time came, Kat Hong would be the one to end his life. It was the chessboard that he had secretly set up. Trieu Fiseung was silent at that time. She knew that she was getting weaker and weaker. Poisonous love not only exhausted her body, but also seriously injured her body. At the moment, he could not mobilize the power of his sword. In his heart, he understood that the champion at the martial arts competition was a far-fetched dream. In the next match, he had to face Weng Hui, a great master with a sound mind. Fiseung's father was worried, because the opponent this time was not easy to play. But of course, he was not confused. He had absolute faith in him. In her heart, today's competition will be a stage for him to shine brightly and make the champion like Weng Hui. Xuan Ni was also smiling and affirmed that her father would not let anyone down. Her face was completely red, and she thought that this time Fiseung would reveal his true form as a weakling in the chessboard. She was just observing him calmly. In her heart, she thought that Fiseung was not as useless as the world thought. On the contrary, maybe he was stronger than anyone imagined. Among the eyes of hundreds of Fiseung supporters, from Ton to Vodai, he called Xuan Ni to make a swift move, to escape the temperament of a real warrior. That strong form made Weng Hui laugh, but Fiseung did not give up. He looked around the board and still did not see any sign of disillusionment. The quick battle began. 2 people clung to each other like a storm. Weng Hui brought absolute tenacity and self-confidence, while Fiseung was silent, and his sword was still yellow, accurate to the point where the opponent was surprised. Weng Hui did not expect a young man, with a position in the 3rd level of training, to be able to challenge the French swordsmanship so well. Then Weng Hui poured all his strength into Fiseung's sword quickly. However, his sword suddenly broke into many pieces, the unhidden. Kat was doubtfully turned to the 4th prince, asking if Fiseung had ever used a trick to make him give up. Chao Kiet affirmed that it was true, but today he felt something was not right. The special strength that had appeared before has not yet appeared. Fiseung's father sat in a chair, in silence for a long time, even though there was no hope. And miracle in his heart, he still did not give up when he saw his son could bravely stand in front of a great swordsman. And Tutui still had a fierce attitude. For the first time, he had to acknowledge a person only in the 3rd level of training who could catch so many tricks of the swordsman. Like that, the result was not useless. Although he had lost at this time, he did not lose face. On the stage, Weng Hui raised his head and said, loudly, he said that the pride of Fiseung originated from the fact that he had been too low, could not help his sword. Now even the weapon has lost. Not understand why he still did not accept defeat. However, he still believed that. Her eyes did not move. In Fiseung's heart, he thought like a wave. He realized clearly that Su Vi's strategy was too big. Even if he had skill, combat experience, he could not make up for it. When he saw that Fiseung was about to accept defeat, Kat Hong just thought that this time he could not replace the other in the martial arts competition. At that moment, Tiong Nim suddenly appeared. She went straight to Fiseung and threw him a sword. The sudden appearance made him stunned, did not understand why Tiong Nim came back at this time. Fiseung finally looked at his heavy sword and made him feel the weight of his hand. A sudden heat immediately made him realize that this is the U-type one of the rare swords that still carry the scent of the new fire that has just been released. Such a weapon could not appear at will. On the stage, Weng Hui still stood there and shouted as clearly as possible. He shouted loudly that Tiong Nim gave the sword to an useless guy like Fiseung could not change the situation. He counted every second for the last chance to kneel down and ask for forgiveness. Fiseung still used all his strength to transfer it to the sword. In a flash, a layer of armor formed, like a wall of spiritual force. The power was exhausted. Weng Hui was stunned, did not understand how his sword was so easily dispelled. Not stopping there, Fai Duong continued to use all his strength. The sword in his hand turned into a large beam like a sword with an all-out attack. The attack directly made Weng Hui kneel down to resist, his whole body tremble with terrible weight. And then the last blow of Fai Duong fell like a lightning bolt, flying Weng Hui out of the fight. In the ultimate humiliation, the whole audience was silent like a letter, then exploded in the sound of their screaming. The victory belonged to Fai Duong. Xuan Yi was happy to jump up and down without stopping to scream. Fai Duong's father could not contain his emotions, laughing happily with a loud clap. He could not hide his pride that his son had done the impossible. Yan Yi looked in front of her with a heavy heart. She knew clearly that this was not the true strength of Fai Duong. Hui had to fight a tough battle, and Tu Tui, the commoner, looked at Weng Hui and then stopped. In her mind, she could not recognize that Fai Duong unexpectedly brought the spirit of a true man, enough to make Yan Yi fascinated. The prince looked at everything with another eye. He knew clearly that Fai Duong had deliberately hidden his talent to then choose the moment to decide to turn the tide, a clever way to hide the real strength. That made Cat Hong more and more excited. The battle continued to enter the final round. Thu Tui turned to tell Bai Chi that one of the two people would have to face Cat Hong. If Moi was better, he should know the time to admit defeat and wait for the opportunity to revenge later. The next match was between Tu Tui and Truong Long. With Thu Vai overtaking her, only a few moves had defeated him in a humiliating way. Li Huangbun immediately declared the victory belonged to Tu Tui. There was only one last match between Bai Chi and Cat Hong to determine the 4 strongest people. Cat Hong stepped on the floor with her eyes wide open, not used to provocation. He said this was the time Bai Chi had to pay the debt of the past. If he didn't dare, there was no other way. Bai Chi immediately stepped on the stage, not to let him have a chance to bully himself anymore. However, Cat Hong still admired her loud voice, asking Li Huangbun not to need to organize the match, just declare that he won. When Li Huangbun fully declared the result, a ball appeared. Fai Duong stepped on the battlefield with a fierce aura. He held her hand tightly, pointing at Cat Hong. He didn't need to say anything. It was clear that this was the time Bai Chi had to stand up for himself, and he would be the one standing behind her. All eyes were on Fai Duong. Everyone was excited to know what he was going to do. Suddenly his father appeared and pulled him down to the battlefield, making him shout like a child. Meanwhile, Tu Tui quickly advised Bai Chi to control his emotions. She clearly understood that a person who had just stepped on the stage like Bai Chi would completely fall in front of a martial arts master. But Bai Chi felt that his body was no longer limited. In his heart there was a power that could not be contained. Fai Duong came to help Bai Chi. Bai Chi did not hesitate to rush in with a sword in his hands and turned into 2 blades, aiming straight at Cat Hong. But he was faster than the French, like a ghost ball, dodging easily and still using firepower to counterattack. Cat Hong suddenly used a blow from above, causing Bai Chi to shake people off in an instant. At the bottom, Tu Tui did not need to be surprised at the sudden power of Bai Chi turning around to ask Fai Duong, but he just smiled and refused to answer. His attitude made Tu Tui angry. Bai Chi continued to launch a series of blue arrows at the same time, as if he wanted to swallow the opponent. But Tu Tui did not stop worrying. Although stronger, but the force was still under a pile of weapons. Could she win? Fai Duong only replied with a sigh that she was too naive. Bai Chi poured all his energy into the next attack, while Cat Hong launched a series of fierce weapons with the intention of killing. But just then a sudden counterattack from Tu Tui hit him, causing the weapons to counterattack immediately. Cat Hong did not react in time for the shock, revealing the horror. Meanwhile, Bai Chi felt like there was a new force of life overflowing his body. Without a moment of hesitation, she launched another blow. The light from her eyes turned to green, completely overwhelming the attitude of Cat Hong. At the moment of decision, Bai Chi flew high. His body was bright, as if he had been swallowed by the darkness of the earth. And that was the end of all the hatred and strength she possessed. Cat Hong had no choice but to transform into a giant bird, but Bai Chi did not give him a chance. She also transformed herself into a fierce white crane. The 2 beasts collided to maintain the strength of light and darkness, creating a fierce battle in the air. Finally, Cat Hong fell to the ground. His body was crushed in pain, and his eyes were long on the battlefield. No one could hide the shock. No one could have imagined that Bai Chi could have such a powerful power. Cat Hong was no different than a man with a messy hair, a messy face, a bruised body. Even so, he was still arrogant, not accepting the truth. But before he could finish his words, he suddenly burst out again. Bai Qi was standing in the middle of the battlefield. His eyes were wet. Finally, she made up for the pain and returned to the main road. Cat Hong was still in shock and could only look at Bai Qi. Meanwhile, the prince, who used to look down on everyone, now had a pale face. Even a weapon was wiped out in the blink of an eye. Bai Qi could no longer be despised. He immediately turned his back and decided to report this to the Lord. Li Huangben stood in the middle of the battle and declared victory for Bai Qi. Tears rolled down his cheeks, but in her heart was a deep happiness. Finally, Bai Qi was wiped out. When the prince returned to the main road, he immediately made a speech to the Lord. He said that Zhao Fizheng despised Huang Tak, possessing extraordinary power and ability to control, and asked the Lord to show up. The Lord heard this and was shocked. He thought that Cat Hong, a former lord, had died in the hands of that powerful man. Luckily, that man had not yet merged with Dan Dian. If that powerful man had really merged with Dan Dian, it would mean that no one in the whole world could compare to him. Therefore, his brother-in-law would come to Tianhuan to investigate clearly. On the other hand, Zhao Fizheng was still criticized for his victory. But of course, she immediately pointed out that the one who helped her and Zhao Fizheng in the forest that day was not Wang Hui, but Zhao Fizheng. She said again that thanks to the lotus seed, which he did not regret, he gave each person a seed. At the same time, Zhao Fizheng showed mercy and praised both of them. How could such a magnanimous person be criticized forever? Hearing this, the lotus seed seemed to be a bad person. So she said, I witnessed everything. That could not be wrong. The truth was exposed, making the lotus seed and the lotus seed all panic. So many doubts turned into a cold wind that swept through their hearts. However, Zhao Fizheng admitted that at that time, her actions were partly intentional because she had her own intentions, so she chose to be silent. Meanwhile, when everyone was still surprised, Zhao Fizheng appeared. All of a sudden, at the end of the ceremony, Zhao Fizheng's appearance was the highest and unimaginable. However, in the crowd, only Zhao Fizheng stood upright and unnecessarily. That act made not a few people hold their breath, and Zhao Fizheng seemed not to care about that small ceremony. Zhao Fizheng's father did not hide his joy, but he should thank Zhao Fizheng for taking care of Zhao Fizheng. However, Zhao Fizheng was not easy to follow. He took a step forward, looked straight at the emperor, and asked about the conditions to take office. However, the emperor directly admitted that the only condition was that he had to hand over the power to the owner. Zhao Fizheng did not hesitate, but refused. He said clearly that that power was kept in his mind and that it could not be separated or taken out, so he did not need that power. Zhao Fizheng replied that he did not care and that the emperor was a new emperor who had just asked for the power of others. Zhao Fizheng's attitude made the emperor angry. He said that when he heard the story of Zhao Fizheng's attitude made the emperor angry, hoping to revive the training base, but he was worried that once he took the pill, Tuvi would increase uncontrollably and could even become non-victorious immediately. This meant that he would have to leave the grass, not having a chance to meet his loved ones again. However, he accepted that, because for him ideal and the path of meditation were more important than everything else. Now Fiduong began to use the power of contemplation in people. The whole sky seemed to be torn apart under a cloud of darkness, lighting up the space, making all those who were there all shivering with fear. Of course, Tuvi's eyes were directly on the changing human body, ready to step through the gates of the non-victorious godhood. From deep within Fiduong's consciousness, he absorbed all the power of the energy-destroying sword, which even the gods could not resist. That was the reason why he could transcend heaven and become a god, something that was once considered impossible. He did not expect that the power of Fiduong's contemplation was the sword that belonged to the island that could not be found in Famnan. A blow brought down the sword, making both the ruler and the prince at the same time kneel in the air. Both shuddered, begging for mercy, not being able to keep a little bit of the throne. At that time, Fiduong's father also urged him to stop. The empire still needed the ruler to stop the gods. If the ruler died, there would be a massacre all over the sky. Hearing this, Fiduong regained his strength. He declared forgiveness to them this time because in the end, the execution was already difficult and he did not want to continue. However, he also clearly warned that if after he ascended to the throne, anyone dared to take revenge on their family or bully his friends, even if they had to break the void, he would also return and wipe out the throne. At this time, both the ruler and the prince both shuddered. Fiduong bowed his head, not daring to resist his last wish before the throne. The sky above began to fluctuate violently, warning of an uproar. Phi Duong gradually stepped away from the ground. His glory covered his body as if a god was about to fall. The three daughters Tutui and Bachchi at this time could not help but sigh. They certainly longed to be born with him. They did not want him to leave the world. Tutui stood still, looking at the shadow of him growing farther away, with great pain because this was probably the last time she saw him. The memories of each fight, each collision, suddenly became precious like a dream that was about to fade away. Bachchi also cried her eyes out, crying non-stop. The touches, the words accidentally made her move again. Now this is just a memory. Even Xuanyi, who has followed him since childhood, a caring heart and a desire to be by his side all his life, also cried when he had to witness the moment of separation. All his close friends stopped their eyes and glanced at the shadow of Phi Duong slowly fading into the sky. The father did not stop calling his name hopelessly, but all the calls disappeared into space, because from that moment, Phi Duong no longer belonged to this world. But this is not the end. The journey of Phi Duong still continues in part 2. Thank you all for accompanying the review to the last moments of the movie. See you in part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to see the worst videos. Thank you all.